So we're going to be covering addiction, and we're going to talk about what that could be, what it could look like, and then, of course, some remedies. I'll kick off by talking about what addiction is. And addiction is defined by a compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite adverse consequences. So it has to be positively reinforcing or intrinsically reinforcing. And typically in addiction, tolerance builds up as you are on or using a substance or a medication, and then which means you need more of it to get that stimuli, and then there is a withdrawal process when you stop taking it. If we look up compulsive behavior in our repertory, we find a whole range of remedies that deal with that type of compulsive addictive behavior. These substances could be opium and its derivatives like morphine, codeine, heroin, Demerol, Tylenol with codeine, Vicodin, etc. All of which I took as a teenager. Not abusive, like I didn't use them as or in an abusive way, but I was given them. What?
Not heroin.
Well, okay, not heroin. Tylenol with codeine, I should say, and Vicodin.
Yeah.
Both were given very freely to me as a teenager when I had surgery on my arm. I actually felt terrible taking them. I did not enjoy it, but I'm just throwing that in there to say it's crazy how easily those are obtained and just given out. So could be things like that, alcohol, cocaine, cannabis. People will say that it's not addictive, but I know, Melissa, you have seen otherwise in many ways, clinically and in people that we know, and myself included. And I think because it's become so common, people act like it's also not a gateway drug.
Right.
But in our opinion, I would say it absolutely is. Amphetamines in general, hallucinogens, nicotine, so tobacco and nicotine addiction, vaping, gosh, that's also a big one right now. Coffee. Hey, I wouldn't say necessarily. I like that you put that in there though, because there definitely are people who are addicted to, and then substances that can be abused as a result of allopathic treatment, similar to Tylenol, codeine, and Vicodin, but you have Prozac, antidepressants, sleeping pills, sedatives, etc. So for some of those, you might not think about the rewarding stimuli, but they are there. So there's some kind of intrinsic reward, even though there's an adverse consequence. And then when you're trying to come off of them, there's a withdrawal and that horrible reaction that comes along with that.
Yeah.
Hahnemann said the narcotic substances are those substances that have the most clearly defined primary and secondary action. There's a primary response and there is an adverse secondary response.
There are some other addictive behaviors that are not just substances, right? So gambling, shopping, where the person makes useless purchases or extravagant purchases. OCD, like purging, cleaning, cleansing. You can look at the OCD rubric and the repertory, and you can pick out the compulsive aspects and think about to what extent does that apply to the addictive behavior in general. Food, a lot of people are addicted to food. Sugar, sex, self-harm. Within self-harm, pain that covers up another, there's a pain that covers up another pain. So it releases the equivalent of an opioid in the brain, the endorphins that make it addicting physiologically. There's addiction to exercise, which I believe that I had in the past. I loved it so much that even when I was sick, I didn't want to stop to let my body rest. I wanted to exercise. I looked forward to it so much. And I was in such a habit and a routine of getting up every morning at 5 and really working out hard. I really loved how I felt. It was how I felt after. It gave me energy for the day. And so exercise is good. And yes, it's great that it gives us energy for the day. But, this relationship between sports and gambling, The same sort of personality that will push themselves to be the top sportsman, exercising like crazy, will be the same sort of personality that then turns toward often the gambling when their sporting days are up, or, they run kind of parallel to each other. So extreme risk taking can be within that, pushing themselves to the limit. Then they become part and parcel of a bigger syndrome. So I wasn't to that point, but I can see how somebody could get there. I loved it. It just the feeling. And then there's the adrenaline junkie, the person that has to have some sort of risky behavior in their life just to feel alive. There's also, again, that link to gambling, the gambling addiction. There's hoarding as an addiction, technology. My goodness. These boys, screen time is almost instantly addictive to these young boys. I don't know what it is. It does something in their brain, but, and I'm not singling out young boys, but that's what I see the most of, these just video games, the gaming addiction. But, women and really anybody, social media, but especially, I think, especially women can be addicted to that social media. We're scrolling, we're scrolling, we're scrolling. Do you know how you can just all of a sudden realize, how long have I been scrolling? Right? You don't even notice it. Or, but also a part of that addiction to social media is, I have this great idea, or I post this great thought, or whatever story, whatever, and you can become addicted to seeing how many people liked it, how many people commented on it, how many people loved it, how many people shared it. And so that's that gives you a good feeling. Information addiction, I can totally see that.
Mhm.
I love to go to school. Like, where can I go to school next? I want to
I was
go to
just thinking
school.
that last night about you, like you would be in school forever if you could.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I want to learn. Yeah, forever. So, self-modification. So we see these people, with all of the tattoos and the piercings, and they don't just stop at a few. It's an addiction. So they just they're just doing it, doing it, doing it. It can be an addiction to cleaning, power, work. We know the workaholic. What do we mean when we say someone's addicted to alcohol or another drug? So if you're a psoric type, remember it's the psoric miasm. If you don't know what the psoric miasm is, I did teach a class on the miasms, and we can link that in the show notes, or you can find it on my website. So if you're a psoric type, then you're hardworking, and then at the end of the day, you just want to relax. You want to just have a drink or whatever you have. 20 years down the line, you would be considered to be addicted if you have to do that every single day. You work hard, you come home, you have to have a drink, or you have to have a smoke, or you have to have a pill, or whatever your thing is, right? To unwind, like just be that, unwind and be still, and to relax. You have to have something to help you relax. The typical psychotic type, which is another type of miasmatic state, is the person who is just sex, drugs, rock and roll, party, 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 party. 5 years down the line, they're addicted. The typical syphilitic type, which is also another type of miasm, is the very first drink, the very first drug. That's it, they're addicted.
I
Okay.
did not know about that miasm, like the miasmic link to addiction like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it just points, yeah, it's like your personality type. And then of all of our miasms, we would say the carcinogenic, so meaning the carcinosin, the cancer miasm tendency, is the most compulsive.
Mm.
And although the tubercular miasm would not be considered to be addictive in the sense that you get hooked on these because they want to change and they don't want to be pinned down to anything. So the fact of the matter is that they do like their risks, the tuberculinum, the tubercular miasm. They like to take risks. They love their risk taking. That risk taking could then lead to a tendency to become addicted to certain things. It seems to be not the most addictive miasm to
And
have.
maybe less addictive to substances,
Right,
maybe more behavioral addictions or compulsions
right,
with
exactly.
tuberculinum. And that does make sense. If you look up tuberculinum, that does have a lot more behavioral elements to it.
Absolutely. So any miasm can either be the precursor of or the direct stimulant to addictive behavior. So, a crucial factor with addiction is the withdrawal state. If for some reason the thing that the person really loves to do is removed from them, what is the reaction? That's what we're going to be looking at when we use remedies. So in this podcast episode, I'm going to talk about a few different addictions and a list of remedies. I'm not going to go into great detail on differentiating between remedies like I do in some of the other podcast episodes, because there is going to be, if there's not already by the time you listen to this, a mini course on addiction remedies, because addiction is so rampant in our society. And that course, I'm going to differentiate between the remedies and really break it down.